when you open the door for somebody else.
Welcome into the vaccine conversation with Melissa and Dr. Bob. It's good to be back. We are back with Joshua Coleman. You guys know him as a California activist. He's also done stuff. He's very famous for in Washington, D.C., but yes, also the father of Otto, who has been very visible in the SB 277 and SB 276 hearings out here in California.
With a vaccine injury.
Yeah, right. Yeah, his child has a vaccine injury. I am assuming people just listened to the last episode, but okay, you're right, in case they didn't.
And also he's known of late for what he calls his educational demonstrations, and that's what we're going to get into today. You've likely seen one of them, seen pictures of one of them, or even taken this idea and used it in your own state and modeled it after what he's doing. So in a lot of ways, he's an innovator, I think, and he's very creative in what he's able to do with this. And I really think that there is a future here for something to go to nationally explode and do this exact type of educational demonstration. And we'll get more into that on this part two of the interview.
Yes, I love that you've done something that no one else has done, and you did it so well and so creatively. And for me, I think that's maybe when I first became aware of who you are as a creative, filmmaker and someone who's just really going to get out there and show the world something interesting. And it was the Star Wars demonstration at Disneyland here in Southern California. And I have a couple of friends that were part of that. And so you also did the V for vaccine demonstration down in Comic-Con, down in San Diego, right? And then you just also led the recent demonstration in the Capitol and helped organize that with people with the signs and everything. So I think that's amazing because, again, no one has done that. We've done kind of our small, just sort of peaceful, non-costumed rallies and demonstrations in this area, but no one's gone to the creative edge that you have, and I think that's fantastic. So
the difference too, I think, because I'm the same like you. Like I've actually, Joshua, you and I have had mutual friends for many years in this whole fight, so we've kind of crossed paths. But it wasn't until I saw the photos from the Star Wars thing where the same thing. I was kind of like, what's this? This is so professionally done. Who's behind this? And I was really impressed. And that's one thing I think that he does really well. So it's not just that the event is good. It's that he captures the event well. Photography and the videography is it's done well so that you see it on a higher level of professionalism and that catches your attention. So if you have your newsfeed going all over the place on Facebook, it's like you'll pay attention because of those details and that presentation. And I think that's the element that you don't see in this movement typically, and why that put him on your radar at that point. And the same was for me, is because when you see something a certain way, you're like, okay, this looks really professional. This is really well done. And then you're like, who's behind this? Who is this person? Right. And then you said you were mad that you weren't personally invited.
Well, I can't believe that there was a Star Wars /vaccine event, in Southern California, and I was not invited. I mean, how is that possible?
Why don't we ask
Joshua?
Why don't we ask him? How come you didn't?
I never in a million years would have thought you would have been out there. We could have put you in a Chewbacca outfit. And
shall I do my Chewbacca?
No, yes. You run too hot though. You couldn't have had that. He's like always hot. You couldn't have had that costume, but you should have been out there. That would have been fun.
You know what? Next time, I will actually absolutely be there next time. Now that I know you and I know how how awesome these events are, but I'm just curious, like what sparked that actual idea, the Star Wars idea? How did that come about? Whose idea was it, and how did you kind of develop that?
Yeah, it came out of just I try to pay attention to other activists over time, and especially like PETA, and I try to think about like we've got a lot of people that they're really willing to go very far, and I think about I've talked about this before, the buckets of blood, where there was like one activist who was rolling up with probably like a bucket full of ink and throwing it on somebody with a fur coat. And I'm just thinking about like, this is one person with maybe $20 worth of material and they're commanding global attention. by doing this. And of course, that's aggressive and illegal, and I wouldn't recommend we ever do anything like that. But I've been trying to like boil down like what can we do with all these activists that can really command attention and on a big scale, and when the media is there. So I knew the opening of Galaxy's Edge was coming up. We knew about that for years, and we knew there were going to be big crowds. And I thought, okay, that's where we go. We cover the entrances, and how do we make it interesting? We dress like Star Wars characters, and we use Star Wars theming. And, we even had some of the signs themed, May the forced vaccines never be with you.
That was so good.
I love that. Yeah.
That was very creative and also very clever.
Yeah.
And because it was part of the theme of the day. But also if somebody, so people could be walking up and go, oh, this is cool. They have characters out here to open this up, and then be like, what are they holding? Oh, signs. What do they say? And like, it's a way to sort of subtly get people opening their eyes, but not in a super in your face, like aggressive way. It was really just in the background, but it caught attention because of the costuming and the theming and all that was so well done.
You're totally right. I mean, because I think Star Wars, of course, is probably the biggest cultural phenomenon of this entire generation. And for people that love it and live it, I mean, it is huge. And so I can imagine, driving up to Disneyland. You're right, seeing all these characters, and those are professional costumes.
Yeah,
these weren't just well masks and sorry, my kids were Jedis for a Halloween one year, but to them Jedi they had their lightsaber, they had like their bathrobes, just their blue and brown bathrobe on and a lightsaber. To them, that was a Jedi outfit. But no, you guys literally, your costumes were probably better than what you would actually see, walking around Disneyland as actual cast members. You guys are very, very highly professional. And so, I mean, I just can imagine the impact, because I can still picture those scenes in my mind, the pictures that you took and the film you took. And I would actually say that probably stays with people who visited Disneyland that day. And in their mind, they'll always be like, there are fellow Star Wars fans that have concerns about vaccine safety. And that's going to stay with me. I don't know if you were even thinking on that level, but I really think that probably had a huge impact.
Yeah, I kind of thought maybe it would soften the message a little bit, and it did. It really did, and especially kids were walking up, and the kids were, wow, and they wanted to get pictures with us.
Mommy, what's vaccine injury?
right. And we heard people walking by, and we were like, every single person is talking about this right now. Mm-hmm. They're all talking about it.
Which is what you wanted, though. Yeah, I mean, that was the entire goal.
That's right.
It wouldn't have made sense if there was not an audience, a captive audience for you. It wouldn't make sense.
Right.
It's not enough to just be in the costumes, have the signs. It has to be in the right location at the right time, right? That's a big part of what you decide.
Yeah, it was supposed to, I think there was somewhere in the neighborhood of 100,000 people there, and we covered the entrance, so every single person who came had to walk by us, and pretty much every single person read at least one sign, if not several. And so they got some boiled down facts about vaccinations.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with autism, and it's a lot of the basic facts, and we were kind of focusing on things that the media never seems to want to cover. There's so many very important facts about vaccines that the media will not talk about. They will not talk about the increase of the schedule. They will not talk about that they're not placebo safety tested, or that the vaccine manufacturers are not liable for their products. So those are things that we put up there and said, okay, you're going to learn this today. And they did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What goes into the preparation for that? For that actual event, and maybe it's probably similar for the V for Vaccines event. I mean, just walk us through that, and how much work was it?
Well, especially for Disneyland, I mean, I think the biggest amount of work was boiling down the messages, and we have these 2-foot by 3-foot signs, and we're trying to make the words as big as possible. So, we had several months to go over and decide what messages we wanted to push out and how to articulate them. So, for instance, we were going to have vaccine manufacturers are exempt from liability, but then we said, okay, vaccine makers are exempt from liability. We can keep the word bigger, and people can see it from very, very far away. I mean, you could see these things from like almost a block and a half, 2 blocks away. They're so big, and you can read them. So that was a lot of the work. Was right there, just with the messaging and keeping it right, and making sure that if they only saw one sign, if they only took a picture of one sign, they would understand that sign. You know, we had talked about doing two signs, like one person has one side and somebody else is arguing over here, and we thought, no, we can't do that, because if somebody only sees that, or if they only take a picture of that, that's going to be a problem. So we just tried to keep it really solid. And then, of course, we brought, I think I pitched about 19 people to come out, and we got 14. But it's an odd phone call to make, to call and say, hey, I've got this idea, and you're going to have to take some time off. It's going to cost you several $100s of your own money, and you're going to have to go out and do this.
For the costuming, right?
The costume, Some people had to get a hotel. The people weren't in the LA area. Oh, well, and also even a lot of the people that were in the LA area, I said, I don't know that you're going to be able to park out here. I don't know that the traffic could be horrible. So I think you're going to have to get a room. Even if you live a half an hour away, I think you need to get a room. And everybody did, and that's how passionate our people are. And then, we built the signs, and we were figuring out how to build the signs, and, and we painted the sticks, and we put soft foam grips on the sticks so that they're comfortable to hold on to. And so, it was a fair amount of work, and of course, scouting the location, making sure we knew where to be.
And this was all kept under wraps because nobody knew about this until all of a sudden photos started showing up everywhere. I was like, oh my God, we had no idea this was going to happen, which was part of the allure, I think. That was the best part, was that all of a sudden it just shows up on your feed that this thing just went down, and it was like all these great messages and getting to this many people, and how positive that was. I knew nothing about it.
Yeah, and I like, a lot of events, people go to, there's always, I don't know, maybe like a speaker, there's kind of like a rally, there's maybe like someone popular in the movement is there. And what I love about these events is everyone's anonymous. You're just there for the issue.
Right.
No one knows who you are. No one knows who anyone else is. No one's there for any sort of personal glory whatsoever. And not that anyone ever is in this movement, honestly. We're all doing it for the cause, but I love that this is just completely anonymous. You're only there for people to see your signs and get these messages and have an impact. I think that says a lot about your motivation.
Yeah, it's not come to my website and be educated and possibly donate. It's like, you looked our direction, you were just educated.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's fantastic. I'm curious, do you remember any of the what the crowd specifically might have said to you that day? Do you remember any of the specific comments, positive and negative? I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah, some of the negative stuff was measles. Thanks for the measles outbreak, and thanks for this, thanks for that, and I didn't know. People didn't really talk so much to me. I was dressed as a stormtrooper, and I had basically it was a pro-vaccine sign where it said mandatory vaccination, forced vaccination is what was it? Forced vaccination is imminent. And so some people come over to me and go, "Oh, that's great." And I thought,
really?
What part's great? Like the sign, or just the So I wasn't quite sure if they were with it or not with it. And but a few people said that they had some really nice positive comments, and some people, of course, that are familiar with the topic and wanted pictures and were really overjoyed to see us, with that kind of presentation out there.
Yeah, and so talk about the V for vaccine. It's basically often V for Vendetta, the movie, and I actually just recently saw that. I don't know, like last year or something. But how is that different?
I think it's called V is for vaccine.
V is for vaccine,
yeah.
Right. The how is that different, and kind of what everyone had the same costume this time, and so that part of it was maybe easier, but difficult to make, because those costumes were amazing. Again, they looked like they were from the movie, and so I know, what made you choose that, and did it have to do with the movie? Maybe walk us through how that was different than the Star Wars event.
Well, the whole idea from the beginning was also to set up a template for other people. Like, let's get people going out. And I thought, the Star Wars thing was pretty complex. See, this is not going to be for everybody, and Star Wars, of course, is not going to work everywhere. So I said, why don't we boil it down and make it a little bit more basic, a little bit more easy? And so we went with the V for Vendetta theming, V for vaccine. That was cheap. The costumes were not expensive.
Okay.
And it was also that was a comic book originally, a graphic novel, V for Vendetta. And so Comic-Con was happening. There was 130,000 people out there. And it was a different event. With Disneyland, people are walking past you through the entrances. And in San Diego, they're actually amongst you. And there's a lot of, I mean, it's one of the only events like that where you can be in a public area where it's legal to be and you're amongst a lot of people. And so we worked on getting 100 people out there, and we got
almost that many.
Yeah, it was like low 90s.
Wow. Yeah.
And of course, and then we went, the more signs we make, the cheaper they get. I think they were about $73 each for Star Wars, and then the price dropped significantly now that we had ordered 100. And then we stepped it up. Also, we had made flyers for Disneyland, but we also we made flyers.
Joshua brought actual flyers.
Yes, right? Yes, and so the flyers mirror the signs. So so for instance, if somebody's holding a sign that says vaccine makers are exempt from liability, and somebody comes over and they want more information, then we have a flyer for them, and it has more details about it. And at the bottom, we have a QR code that they can scan with their phone that takes them directly to the sources. Okay. And of course, we're using what they consider reputable: CDC, FDA, IOM, all that stuff.
Right.
Or if somebody says that's BS, I don't believe it. Here.
Yeah.
Take it.
Yeah.
This will take you right to it. So that was, we stepped it up, and now we're sort of, that's the template that we're really trying to push now with future demonstrations.
So you're trying to actually help educate other people nationwide how to do these kinds of things where they are. And,
right.
I mean, are all these costumes kind of ready to go? Someone else could actually use your same stuff, or do they kind of have to put their own stuff together if they're going to do something like this?
I mean, they could order their own stuff.
Yeah,
it's really not that expensive, But when we also the third thing that we did was not themed, and so we kind of want to make sure that not all theming is going to work everywhere, and not every activist is going to know. Where it might be tacky to do that some places. And of course, there are some states you can't have a stick with your sign. There are some states where you can't wear a mask and be out demonstrating. So we it was important to do then another one to show people you can do this several different ways, and it doesn't always have to be this way. But we've had people already copy the V for Vendetta thing. They've done it in Australia.
Oh, cool.
They've done it in, I think, Michigan and some other places. So it's catching on.
So does it feel like flattering when you see that? To see people like taking this idea of an educational demonstration and putting it all together and trying to educate people in their area? Does that feel kind of like, wow, this idea I had like back, many, many months ago, like has blossomed into this thing that people want to do. And of course, it inspires you to help give as much information as you can to people so that they can do it right. But doesn't that I would feel so flattered if I saw people. It's
really flattering. Yeah, It's amazing. But the thing that really excites me is that they're doing it. And I really think it is a different way of educating. And it's exciting, and really a lot of this also came out of the fact that we're being censored so much online, and now that we've started doing this, I'm in a way I'm kind of glad that we got pushed to this point, because I feel like we should have been doing this a long time ago. Hitting the streets, and really it's a different thing in person than online. When you're looking face to face with somebody, you're not a Russian bot. Oh, you're not a whack job. You seem very articulate, and what you're saying, I can't tell you how many times I've had a conversation with a random person, which of course happens because people ask what happened to Otto, and very oftentimes somebody will say, I've always, been told that you guys are crazy, and what you're saying seems fairly logical, and you're making sense to me. And so I do think it's important to go out there and be seen and have these conversations in person.
Well, Dr. Bob and I have always talked about that too. Like our big goal has been public education, because this idea of like legislators being the be all and end all of whether or not, people know about this it's not good enough. The media and legislators are not the only people we can target. And the most important people we can target are the average people, the public. Most people just don't know this is happening like this, and they don't know all the elements like you're saying. And once they do, you have like a 20 to 30 or hour-minute conversation with somebody. You talk about your personal story. like I said, the way I do on every plane ride to the person next to me who made the mistake of saying hello.
And then some investors like, oh, I think they brought a really good book with them or something they're planning to read.
Yeah, and too bad for that on accident. Yes, they did. Because I feel like if people could just have the conversation with you and understand what's going on, at the end of that conversation, they would have a completely different view on this issue, on who the opposition is, and whether or not we need to have laws that are mandating these things. The challenge is, how do we have that conversation with everybody in the country or in the world, because they're only getting their information from the media. And so our big push has been about public education. That's the thing, town halls and rallies and heart-to-heart conversations with your circle and your extended circle and strangers sometimes, just having face-to-face conversations and interaction with each other to help keep us motivated. It has to be in person. This idea of doing anything online anymore is just, like I've always said, it's just not good enough.
No.
And so this does, what you're talking about is doing public education on a slightly different way, which is great because it's so important to have all the different elements, but it's doing it in a big way. It's doing it in a very present way and a very, the potential at the Capitol demonstration, there were 600 people, right, that were registered just for those who were holding signs. That's not to count for the rest that came and supported and were also part of the opposition. But that's a lot of people in uniform clothing with matching signs, with varying messages, but that kind of presentation makes you pay attention. And if people are doing this across the country, and in my perfect world, I would see every month there would be one of these massive demonstrations in some state across the nation every single month, because there's no reason why that can't happen. Mm-hmm. And if people have the tools to do it and they learn how to do it correctly and make sure if it's going to be themed, it's the right way. Or if it's not themed, everything is still uniform. And of course, my biggest thing is the messaging has to be there. That's the number one thing. You cannot talk about your own personal views of how vaccines are poison on a big, huge sign and walk around with that and expect the average person who, again, is not personally into this battle like we are. You cannot imagine that person is going to sit there and go, tell me more. Usually that cuts them off and they get defensive and they're not listening at all. And so messaging, that's something that you've cared a lot about. And I know a lot of people are interested in how to do this and how to do it right. And maybe you can give everybody some tips or some ideas of what you would like to see if somebody's going to take this on in their state. What would you want to see them doing, and how would you want to see them doing it to match kind of this vision that you had?
I think it's making the most out of a ripe situation, and so finding those big crowds, those big crowded areas. I see people. I was seeing people at the Capitol, 200 to 300 people out there with signs, and I thought, there's almost nobody here. There's almost more of you than there's traffic, and with small signs, and so the big signs can go a long ways. Just the fact that 14 people can go to Disneyland and inform 100,000 people that's great use of resources, great use of activists. So it's find an event where there's going to be people there. Avoid events where people are intoxicated.
That seems like a silly thing to say, but that's a really good point because you don't want to be on the receiving end of aggression. And especially when a lot of moms come out to be a part of these kinds of things, you do not want somebody that's aggressive towards you who has what they believe their personal belief, then they're targeting you. That is just not going to be comfortable.
Right. And so it's a few ideas came to me, historical, reenactment events. I know that the East Coast, and some on the West Coast, but there's a lot of, they relive this historical moment in history, and people are dressed up in costume, and then the whole county shows up.
Right.
And that would be, you could be great, dressed up as, I don't know, redcoats or what were we? Regular clothes. I don't know. You could dress up as redcoat soldiers at an event like that. You could dress up as a Revolutionary War reenactment, and instead of carrying your old muskets, you're carrying signs. How fantastic!
Freedoms,
right? How that you could be like a troop, you're walking through those kinds of events, using your freedom of speech, and and you have to get to that level of creativity.
Yeah.
You could do this down in Texas, when they're, if they're, reliving, I don't know if they do, Alamo, reenactments, or, a lot of these, are around, war,
Right.
because that's a lot of what history is based on. But that's where I think the creative costuming comes into play. But again, it's about peace and love and understanding and these vaccine messaging that's specific to that event. Hopefully you could be a great motivation for people to really get creative.
But he's also saying it doesn't always need to be themed, that there are times that it should just be uniformity, like everybody's wearing matching shirts or clothes or same pants or whatever dress code, but that sometimes it's better to just not be about a theme and it be really just about the location and the messaging. So I think it's probably deciding when is it right? Like, it's not just a fun thing, like, let's all dress up and do this, because then it can get a little...
Yeah, and you always want to run your idea by, a lot of other people, so you're not doing something that's going to totally backfire.
And I kind of thought, like, maybe, people dressing up as scholars, that could be a nice fallback. Dressing up as, like the glasses and almost like the Harry Potter kids, like they're, like a college professor or something.
You'd fit right into that perfectly.
Yeah.
It's obviously there's so many potential ideas and there's so many venues and so many circumstances that it would work. I really hope, we have listeners obviously across the nation. I hope that everybody listening, and I would say if you're part of a very strong activist group and you want to create something like this and do it and really do it, would you suggest they contact you?
Yeah. We have a website called visforvaccine.com. So it's sort of like A is for Apple, V is for vaccine. So it's almost like we're going to do kindergarten education, because we are really doing, it's like the real four basics that I want everybody to know and understand from this campaign is a vaccine can hurt or kill you. They are harmful. A lot of people don't know that. Vaccine makers are exempt from liability, the increase of the schedule, and that they're not placebo safety testing. And of course, we have 6 other messages. But I think those are the 4. Every single person should know that. Most people do not know that.
Right.
And we can make that happen. And so, we have the messaging up there, the graphics, and we have tutorials on how to build the signs, and a whole protocol on the organizer as far as finding the event, knowing the law, because again, the law is different in different areas, and it's also good to check in with the police, which I've done, and the police are really respect that when you check in with them and you make sure absolutely, and they'll tell you, there are things like there are law, like for instance in California there's a law at how big the stick can be. It can't be more than a 1/4 inch thick or 2 inches wide. Now, you probably would never guess that, and you could show up and organize a huge event and show up, and the sticks could kill you. They could say, you got to go. Yeah. And they would be right, and you didn't do your due diligence. So you got to make sure that you know what you're doing and scout the location and all that.
Well, that's fantastic. So your website helps, kind of guide people through all those things. I would never even think about any of that.
You can do your own demonstration, Dr. Bob.
Star Trek this time.
Nice.
I like
it. I'm dibs on Captain Picard. So
you're gonna have to shave that head.
I know. So I'm curious, what's next for Joshua Coleman? Do you have any specific projects that you're working on right now, and where do you see your activism leading, the medical freedom movement in the near future?
Well, so I'm continuing on the whole VS for vaccine thing right now, really getting that up and running and talking and helping people get their different events going in different states. And I've had people contact me from other countries. Australia's got one coming up soon, and then Guam recently contacted me. So I really want to get that up and going. And what I would like is when everybody has signs, that's like the hard part is collecting money and getting the signs built. But after that, you're kind of good. You don't really necessarily need to spend more money unless you're going to do another themed event, need a costume. So I kind of, after everybody's got signs, I want to get them to buy GoPros. So that was my one big regret in San Diego, is that people weren't GoPro'd up, because there was a lot of like people spitting on people and women being yelled at, called the C word, and drinks thrown on signs. Now, if we only would have had that footage and could capture that hatred, I really think that's something that if we could put that out there, I think any human being can look at that and see a woman being treated that way and say, that is wrong.
Yeah.
Regardless of the issue, that is bad. That is wrong. And so I would like to see that it get to that point. And then, I'm going to continue making videos and working on documentaries. I've worked on like 5 or 6 different documentaries, which will all start coming out over time here.
Oh, cool.
Because I think that's a great way to educate. And that'll be what I'm working on, and whatever else comes my way,
Yeah. I'm curious. I want to circle back to Otto. I'm curious how he's doing now with his vaccine injury, but I'm actually even more curious kind of what he thinks about what you're doing. And, is he ever involved in this? And is he excited to be involved? Does he like to stay out of the spotlight? Kind of what's his take on all this?
So he's really happy. He's a really happy kid, which is wonderful. He doesn't remember when he could walk. So that's, it's unfortunate he had such little time to walk, but I think it's also was good in a way also. And I've met, over time through therapies, young teens that also had transverse myelitis, and they are just miserable. So many of them, and I look at those kids and I really thank God that Otto's such a happy kid, because that would just destroy me if he was just upset about his injury. So we never really talked about what had happened to him. We just treated him like a normal person. This is how life is. And so I never talked about it. And I was actually kind of waiting for him to ask me, why can't I do these other things? Why can't I walk? And he never got to that point, really. And then in 2015, when I was going to go give a speech for SB 277 at one of the rallies, I wanted him up there with me. I wanted him to be seen. And I thought, I have to talk to him now. Now I'm going to have to explain to him what's going on, because he's going to hear me talking. I think he was 6 at the time. He wouldn't have absorbed everything, but he would have heard some things. And so I pulled him aside, and I explained to him why this had happened to him and what had done it. And he was like, okay, all right. And I explained why we were going to go up there, and he got it. And he said, okay, great. Okay, that's fine. He wasn't really all that phased. So I keep educating. We talk about vaccine, not all the time. I don't hammer these kids, but I do talk about it, especially with, in California, we have to worry about Gardasil. I think at 12 years old, the child can make that decision. And so I want to make sure both my boys are thoroughly educated. And so we do talk about vaccines here and there. And I keep bringing up the day that, some people are going to pull him aside at school and try to convince him to do something he shouldn't do. Yeah. But he, just a few months ago, he was reading a book. He just tears through the books, and it's not just because he's paralyzed and can't do anything. He just loves to read. And I noticed he had moved on to another book, and he was halfway through this really big book. And I asked him, I said, "What happened to that book? Did you finish it?" And he said, no. He's like, it was really good, and the characters were really good, and all this exciting stuff was starting to happen. But then there was this part about vaccines, and they were saying how great vaccines were. And so I just didn't want to finish it. I just put it down.
Wow.
And he's like, it really stunk because it was really getting good. But so on his own, he said, I'm good. I'm not going to read this. So that was impressive, that he didn't just go through and finish it.
Yeah. Wow.
But he likes what he likes what I'm doing. He understands what I'm doing. They've been understanding. I've had to be away from home for several months, and they don't like it when I'm gone. But they are understanding and they get it. We have a great support system. Grandma and Grandpa spoil him, so it's certainly not the worst thing in the world when I'm gone. Although Fenton, my younger one, recently said, "I'm worried you're going to get shot." Oh. And I said, I'm like, why do you think I'm going to get shot? And so he had just learned about Abraham Lincoln. And he said, Abraham Lincoln, he was shot because he was talking about things that other people didn't agree with. And you're out talking about things that other people don't agree with. So I think you're going to get shot. And I said, no, I'm not going to get shot. And he said, well, you don't know that. And so I said, would it make you feel better if I got a bulletproof vest? And he said, yeah. And I said, okay. So I bought a bulletproof vest. I've not worn it in public, but I do now own a bulletproof vest at the house, and the boys kind of love that. Right. So
yeah. Oh, wow.
And so just finishing up on what you're saying about Otto. So do you think he feels like he wants to weigh in on this as he gets older, as a person who has been personally affected? Does he want to, like Dr. Bob was saying, stay out of it? Like, does he kind of can you sense where he's going in that?
I could see him getting into it. When he's asked at school what happened to him and he explains it to them, and he's interested in letting people know and keeping people from making similar type mistakes. So, I mean, he gets kind of bored, coming to the rallies with me. I think it's kind of exciting for about an hour, and then he's over it. And with SB 276, he was coming out, and it's very hot. Yeah. So that has not been enjoyable to him, just because it's uncomfortable and boring. But I could definitely see him getting into this as time goes on and being a good voice.
I was so proud of Otto in one of the 276 hearings. How when it came time to call the witnesses for the opposition, and he just shot right up there and sat at the table, and I was like, I thought that was amazing, and
for 4 hours.
Yes, he sat there for yeah. I mean, that was incredible. And then I don't remember a single legislator asking Otto anything.
No.
Or wondering, why is a child in a wheelchair up here?
Right.
And I wonder if you guys talked about that, or if you asked them about that. I mean, a room full of legislators and people are talking about vaccine injury, and Otto is sitting right there, and not one question or statement. Did you guys talk about that?
No, we didn't talk. We didn't talk about it, but yeah, it was. I mean, that's why he was up there. He was up there, so they would have to look at it. I mean, he's been a good example, because you can visually look at him and you can understand. It's not just like a neurological condition. You can look at him and you can see that was the damage that happened. And one of the legislators brought up Otto's story, but yeah, nobody asked, and they didn't want to go there.
Yeah. Well,
that's kind of symbolic for this whole conversation, right?
Yeah,
let's just pretend it's not happening and ignore it. Is there anything you want to share that you need from people, or a call to action? We've kind of already discussed it, because you talked about the website and the kinds of things that people would need to go forward with their own educational demonstrations. Is there anything else you feel, or a message you would want to give to parents that are listening, that are involved in this, maybe outside even of the educational demonstrations, or within that you want to give?
Well, I think the big thing is just educating. I think that's where we're really going to win this fight, is just educating. People are smarter than you think. They just don't have the information. I would like to see our group sort of rebrand itself a little bit, and I've talked about this before, but I think about the Mormon religion. Like, I want to take from them. When I was growing up, and was became familiar with the Mormon religion, you knew them as being really nice and always willing to help you. And as an adult now, 40 years later, I still remain, them as they're really nice, and they're always willing to help you. In fact, the ramps at my house were built by a Mormon who didn't refuse to take any money for the materials that he bought. And I think we could be like that. And our people do get angry and frustrated. And I mean, a lot of these activists are parents with injured children that are a little sensitive. It's tough. And when somebody says something ignorant or angry to you or insulting to you, it's easy to snap at them. And I think we really, if we're going to educate people, we can't act like that. And so let's be like that. Let's take that from them. I mean, no matter what anybody thinks about the Mormons, whether they think, if they think what they believe is absurd, they have respect for them on the level that they are nice people and that they are helpful. They will help you, and I'd also like to see, let's also steal from the Hare Krishnas. And you might remember in the 1980s, the Hare Krishnas, they were always in the airports and handing out flyers. They had a big smile on their face. You expected to see them there. They were always there. And I think with these education demonstrations, I think we can be everywhere. And I think those two things coupled together could be amazing. There's the nice people, whether they like us or not, but that does gain respect. And then I think that just helps open the door to, okay, maybe I should take a look at this, or maybe that's right. And again, if they continue to see us, they keep seeing us every time they go out, or every time they go to a state fair or a Garth Brooks concert, or Disneyland, and they keep seeing these messages.
That's right.
That could be powerful.
That's the key. Visibility is constant and consistent visibility.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, awesome. Josh, has been a pleasure
Joshua.
It's been a pleasure to get to know you.
You called me out on that on the first one.
It's been a pleasure to get to know you, Joshua. I'm fascinated, and I will admit I don't have a professional Star Wars costume, but
there's always time. Hey, Christmas is coming up.
Yes, Cheryl.
Cheryl.
I need but in all seriousness, I think it's fantastic what you do, and just the way you do it, so professionally, and you're doing something that no one else is doing, and again, you're inspiring the world and people in other countries to do this, and we're not going away. We're not a quiet people anymore, and we're intelligent, and we're here to make people aware that vaccine injury is real, and there's a conversation to be had. So thank you for contributing to that in such an amazing way.
Thanks for having me.
All right. And what's that website again?
visforvaccine.com.
visforvaccine.com. We will put a link to that.
Stop hitting me. Every time he makes a point, I'm like, because usually so when we have a guest, I have to sit much closer to Dr. Bob than usual. Usually I get a lot of space and protection. And then now whenever we have a guest, he every time he makes a point, he's like, I think I talked about this in season 1, use your hands a ton. And so he just uses his hands have to rubber band into my arm every time he's making a point. I get it, guy. Okay, you made your point. Yes, but thank you so much for coming in studio to have this conversation. I really hope that people that maybe were sitting kind of going, oh, I've seen that. Now the switch has been flipped on of we're going to do that, because I don't want people sitting around going, oh, that would be great if we could. Because that's the big difference is you have to be able to take action and make it happen, and don't wait for somebody else to do it. You need to do it and get some people together, and you've already got a platform of how to do it. You've seen some examples. Everybody listening, if you have not been part of an educational demonstration in your state, what are you waiting for?
Right.
I mean, there is no time to wait. There's no bill you have to wait for. It doesn't have to be when there's a law that's coming up. It needs to happen on a regular basis.
Yeah.
This is about public education. There is no time to do it or not to do it. It's all the time. So if you've been sitting on this, now's the time to get together with, some of your educated activists and advocate friends and make it happen. You've given them all the tools that they need, and I hope within the next month or two, this inspires a series of them that we will start to see over the next 10 to 12 months, all across the nation and even in different countries.
Yep.
I think this is great.
All right. Well, thank you, Joshua, and thank you, everyone, for listening, and we will see you next time on the Vaccine Conversation.
The information in this podcast is for entertainment purposes only. It is not intended as medical advice. Always consult your healthcare professional for information on vaccines and infectious diseases.